Ladies and gentlemen, once again, here we are. We're ready to get into it. It's time for the Duval Dive. Of course, with me as always, my friend Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game of Jaguar Report. And listen, I know it's been a tough time for Jaguar fans of late. With all the injuries and all that went on, a number of losses, a fourth straight loss for those who are keeping track at home there on Christmas Eve. Not the gift that the Duval Devout were hoping for in Tampa. But as I wrote in Christmas holiday fashion, Travis Holmes on Jaguar Report, and even opened this show with, I still feel pretty confident the Jags will get 10 wins, but there's a number of things that may prevent that and may also promote that. Here, we'll get into some of that. First of all, I'm not going to go far as, well, maybe I will go as far to say burn the tape concept for Christmas Eve. Obviously, Trevor hurt again.
Yeah.
Colts fans thinking they're justified in making jokes about trying to say Trevor Lawrence is injury prone because they're hurt in their soul about Anthony Richardson. Yes, him, the quarterback. Yeah. Right, their draft pick that made it 4 games. First of all, calling either of them injury prone at this point, probably a little tall. But listen, for all the stuff that's going on, one thing that is a common theme right now for the Jags is injury. And it felt like nothing worked against Tampa, right? I think that's a safe way to feel, to express how the Duval Devout in general feel, right, Travis?
I think so. And at the end of the day, the reason that we all have that feeling is simply because when you are down 30-0, it feels like nothing worked. Now, and feelings, however you feel, that's the reality, unfortunately. But we talked about this a little bit before we started the pod. I walked away after rewatching the game, the all 22. I walked away from that game feeling actually very optimistic on the long-term, prospects of the team and the long-term prospects of Trevor Lawrence. And he actually did a few things really, really well. But it just, the things that they can't do will continue to be a problem, unfortunately, like running the ball and like, having those explosive plays. Those are the big things that get you the big points.
Now, wait a minute. Just wait a second here, Travis, okay? Because you sprinkled in some of that Travis Holmes, this team makes me drink realism/pessimism in there. But you came away from the film, feeling better. Like, yeah. I'm going to need a little help with that. What was it that lifted your spirit such that it was?
Well, again, like we do when we have our film prep, when we look into the numbers and everything else, and the data tells us one thing. I went into looking at the all 22 tape saying, all right, I know what I'm about to see. Trevor Lawrence is going to be missing his checkdowns. He's going to be missing his hots. He's not going to be identifying the blitzes. There are going to be some miscommunications at receiver. And some of these things did happen. Don't get me wrong. They did. And there were some key plays that resulted in fumbles that were because of some of these issues. We'll talk about that later. But overall, Ashley, no, he matriculated the ball downfield well. They even ran the ball at first to start the game on the first few series moderately well until the game just kind of got out of hand. He hit his hots early. He was moving the ball down the field with Evan Ingram, and until they started having those turnovers, those miscommunication issues, those hey, I just didn't practice with you. I wanted you to do this, and then you instead did this situations. Other than that, I actually saw that Trevor did his job. And overall, the issues are when you get into those 3rd and short situations, those money downs, maybe even those 4th down situations, you can't run the ball because the offensive line stinks on the inside. And so you're forced to throw it, unfortunately. And then it becomes a lot of those option routes where you're just what you're expecting the receiver to go right, they go left, and you're kind of just stuck holding the ball. You're holding the bag. And that's a lot of what happened in this game.
So, and for context, for those that may be kind of wondering, how could Travis be so positive? Please remember last week's Duval Dive when Travis, in my opinion, very thoroughly gave an excellent explanation for tracking where it's more than likely Trevor got his concussion, and then showed the throws that were just completely missed and off base. Now, I'm not here saying that Travis felt like there was still more concussion action. On the contrary, it sounds like based on what you're describing from reading the film, maybe he was right to be out of concussion protocol, at least from the standpoint of how he was delivering the football. But the other issues were creeping up, and we were having a conversation beforehand. You made an appearance on the PSF app with UCF Jaguar himself, Josh. Bing, I guess. Well, yeah, that was the Bing. We live there. That's right. By the way, I'm pretty sure we're going to be doing an episode of the Duval Dive live this weekend. Travis and I will talk more about that and see if we can coordinate it. So look out for it, by the way. Yeah, it's worth a Bing. Bing! But all that in mind, Travis, I feel like you mentioned the inability to run the ball. You can't run the ball inside, mostly because the interior linemen, except for maybe Ezra Cleveland, are just going to be guaranteed a loss up front. And maybe sometimes him too. I mean,
sometimes him too. Yes.
Granted, I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass as the newest arrival to the offense.
I got you.
Not. Listen, it's depending on the era. I haven't paid attention to the all 22 as closely as you have.
No, I understand. Offensive line play is a lot of communication. You're the one who always hammers that into my head. It's a lot of communication. He's the newest guy on the line. I fully understand it. He gets a little bit of a rope.
Right. I'm saying I'm taking your word for a lot of it here too, because also this week I hadn't done quite as much research as not because of the holiday, at least not the Christmas holiday, but for all the bowl action I'm doing this weekend for the 3-point conversion. Bing! The Pop-Tarts Bowl is going to happen Thursday night. Then Monday, or rather happened to Thursday night, depending on when you see this video, right? And then the upcoming Monday is the Citrus Bowl, and I'm covering both. No, I'm not necessarily excited to see Iowa play Tennessee, but that's a whole other question. That all being said, you could try to run it inside. The assumption is that you're going to have a loss inside in line play.
There were a lot of those in this game.
But I build on that to say, if the other side, if the defensive coordinator is watching tape and feels confident that their interior can control your interior, which with Tampa, they're not bad there. They may start doing things, watching for an outside run. And I don't care how good Travis Etienne is, when the numbers are overwhelming like that, the defensive coordinators can see you coming. You're helpless. By the way, Anton Harrison at some point getting injured as well, getting banged up, I should say, not necessarily injured, but I mean that certainly had to have been a factor. And props for him for making this big an impact as a rookie in a positive way too. But yeah, at that point, you can't run. You're one-dimensional. And then Trevor gets hurt, too, hurting his shoulder. So at that point, you're just royally screwed, right? I mean, what do you do?
I mean, yeah. And again, there's a limited amount you're going to be able to take from this game when the score is 20-0 and then it gets to 27-0. So a lot of what we're even talking about is specifically when the game was 20-0 and beforehand, because that's when you can truly make effective change as far as the play calls, as far as the scheme, as far as all those types of things. But then once Trevor got injured, he had his, I don't want to call it garbage time, but we'll say late touchdown, and then it immediately gets injured. That changes the whole scope of the game. At that point, you're kind of just, all right, man. Yeah, like I think a lot of even Jags fans are just, all right, I'm going to do something more important. I'm going to go and do some laundry or whatever it is, and just kind of just went about their day at that point, because that was a rough watch at that point.
Let's get the kids and have them open their one present on Christmas Eve.
But again, I still walked away from this offense. If we're talking about Trevor specifically, I walked away, and again, I'm not optimistic. And I'm probably top 5 most pessimistic people that still thought the Jaguars would win 10 games, which is just a crazy oxymoron. But Trevor had a reasonably good game outside of the one issue that we're going to talk about when we have show and tell. But overall, there was just no juice as far as the receiving core was concerned. Like, you had Elijah Cooks, who actually had a really good game. His 3 catches, they kind of went away from him at that point after that, just because I think there wasn't enough separation for Trev to feel comfortable to give him, more looks. But they also figured out, Press Taylor is actively in real time trying to figure out what these receivers do well versus the previous receivers, like Kirk and Zay that we had. And you can see the way that they're changing their play calling, the way that they're changing the offense in very many ways. They're trying to figure out what guys do well and what guys don't. And that may be positive for this upcoming week, at least. There may be some, small changes you will see as far as how he runs the offense against the Panthers versus last week. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get, we'll see what happens with the quarterback and Trevor Lawrence practicing and playing and everything else. But it may be positive.
And just a general thing that I note here too. I don't care for and this is my personal opinion. Come after me, you want to. Twitter handles right there on the screen. VSOTT if you're listening to the podcast. Typically, if you're shouting into the void on Twitter or wherever you are, oh, the play calling, that tells me you don't know anything about play calling. And that's at any level of football, by the way. Oh, golly, the play calling. That's just kind of a general boogeyman term that you saw something that didn't go as well as you'd like. And listen, rightly so, as a member of the Duval you want to see things work. But to just shout play calling into the void isn't the answer. And I think, Travis, when we get to show don't tell here, talking about how they're dealing with turnovers and things like that.
Let's use the reverse as the perfect example. Everyone in Duval County was throwing stuff at their TV screens and cursing their moms out, talking about that reverse call. Like we didn't love that reverse call the other 4 times that happened successfully with Calvin Ridley having explosive plays.
Yeah. No.
Right. Like, if it works, we love it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we don't. But we talked about this again before the pod started. We need a little bit of a refinement from Tim Jones. He gave away the reverse in how he lined up. He lined up like a guy playing basketball about to set a pick before the snap of the ball. He's lining up like this, not like a receiver, not like I'm on the line. And I wish I would have recorded that piece just to show people before the snap. Like, the linebacker points him out and says, no, he's like, this is what's happening. And then he makes a play on Calvin Ridley doing the reverse. Like, the guy, that's one of those things that you have to refine. Like you talked about before, you have to have that refinement because, again, you can be a good college player, but in the NFL, it comes down to the small stuff.
You could even be a good special teams player. I wrote a lot about Tim Jones as a special teams player on Jaguar Report in the preseason. Bing! But let's get into the show don't tell as you build on that concept. Hey, this reverse was good. It was execution. So let's walk right into it right here.
All right. So this is one of the plays that I said Trevor made a mistake, and everyone's saying, hey, the offensive line is bad. The offensive line is bad. Yeah, maybe, but they blitzed 7 with 6 people blocking. Trevor has to know that on the snap of the ball. But why do I mention that? Because on the snap of the ball, this is the all 22. Tim Jones is open now. Throw the ball. Like, at the end of the day, this fumble was on Trev and no one else. This was the miscommunication that Doug Peterson was talking about. This is not a wrong check. It's not an incorrect route. It is simply they're playing cover 2, and Trev and the quarterback. So Trev and the offense is expecting this to be a vertical, more like a skinny post. He curls it. It's an interception, but that's not on Trev. This is the other quote unquote miscommunication because you have 2 receivers running behind each other, literally right behind each other. And that's obviously not the way it's drawn up. However, this is going to be an interception anyways. This is going to be an interception anyways, no matter how you look at this, because that linebacker read Trevor's eyes literally the entire way. If you can watch it from the snap of the ball, he's looking at Trev. He's going where Trev goes into his drop, and he just picks the ball off. Even without the miscommunication, that's still a pick. And I can't necessarily blame Trev, but I also can't just say it's on the miscommunication. It was just an ugly play.
Well, and that's spoken like a defensive back in the truest form, Travis. Let me tell you where I see here is when you got a play that's going on where 2 receivers are running the same route, how are you supposed to look a guy off? You don't know where anybody's going. So yeah, reading the eyes is going to kill a quarterback because he can't look anybody off. He's got to redefine the play. So I feel like Trevor's eyes may be better in an instance where the 2 damn receivers aren't running on each other's heels. I think that's worthy of mention.
That's fair. That's fair. Calvin Ridley's literally running 3 yards behind Parker Washington when the ball's released from his hand. And that's like, what do you do as a quarterback? I get it. That's why I say I walked away from this feeling better about Trev because the Jags had 4 turnovers. 3 of these turnovers led to 21 points in a game that the other team scored 33. That's the ball game. No matter how your defense does, that is the ball game. Like, you can't beat that. And the Jaguars have to be better about protecting the ball, as Doug Peterson stated on Tuesday. But we've been saying this for 4 weeks straight now.
Well, and I'll even add this too. This is another credit to the defense that I've been throwing. We've been saying all year, it's not every time that the turnovers turn into the maximum number of touchdowns either with this defense. But right. I mean, at some point, you can't live on that. We talked about against the Ravens on Monday night that 2 for 5 in the red zone were the Ravens against the defense, but the Jags on offense, unfortunately, were completely inept. So, it's that mix there too. But as much as we've been griping about the ineptitude of the offense, here's some concepts that work that we may see going into Carolina. A little bit of more show, don't tell. Travis, talk about the dagger concept here.
So the Jaguars haven't run much dagger this year as far as actually throwing it to the dig route. But here they find Elijah Cooks on that 15 to 20-yard dig. And then they later come back to the same concept with Calvin Ridley running it. And again, we haven't seen much of it because of the offensive line, because even on that play, Trevor didn't seem like he was comfortable holding the ball as long as he had to hold it. So then now they do a little bit more max protection. And now they run the exact same route combination with Calvin Ridley. The only difference is more of a skinny post instead of a straight vertical. So this is something that you can see Press Taylor's wheels moving in his head. He's trying to figure out how to use these guys better, because we don't have all the dogs we would normally have. We don't have Kurt anymore. We didn't have Zay in the game. Well, now we have a Tim Jones and Elijah Cooks. How do we use these guys appropriately? Whereas the offense may have been created for those smaller, quicker guys. Because again, Elijah Cooks is a bigger target, maybe a little bit slower getting to that spot, so how do we run the route combinations that's going to work best for these guys? And again, there are some good things that came out of this game. You can see maybe they're going to run a little bit more play action coming out of this game against the Panthers. Maybe they're going to run a few more dagger concepts. Maybe they'll even give him some more contested catch opportunities, because now he's a different type of receiver than what we previously had. But again, I felt bad for Press Taylor, because he's going to get he's going to get all the action and all the flames from all the fans. And unfortunately, I don't think he necessarily deserves it, because frankly, there's not much you can do with the players that are on the field, in my personal opinion.
Well, right. And these hiccup games, as I'm calling them, listen, let's get a couple other things out here too, by the way. All I heard about was Shane Steichen for, however many weeks. Oh, he's the coach of the year. He lost to the Fraud Cons 29-10, I think it was, something like that. Okay. They lost their game. The Texans, and I'm not going to make fun of them because they played a Browns team that is the most underrated NFL defense. I said it weeks ago when the Jags played them. I've been saying basically the second half of the season on this and the Student of the Game pod. Bing! Like that. The Texans running into that buzzsaw without C.J. Stroud was going to be a loss. I was confident in that. Yeah. But now both teams have helped the Jags hold serve. They could potentially clinch the division this coming up weekend against the Carolina Panthers, and that dagger concept could be part of it. Just to make it clear, for those who didn't, are listening to the pod, it's one receiver up top to pull the safety. That's going to be a speed guy, let's say like a Calvin Ridley type, and then somebody who's behind the linebackers, that could catch the dig underneath to take advantage of the space that's left there. By the way, you mentioned something about Trevor being uncomfortable with it. A, it's a concept they don't run a lot. B, if you're holding the ball for a while on this O-line with as many injuries as Trevor has, you can't blame this poor guy.
That's it. But again, as you saw the second one, he was a lot more comfortable with it. But that's what I said, that you have an Elijah Cooks running it. He's going to take a tick longer to get to that spot versus a Calvin Ridley running the same route. He's going to be there a step or two ahead of the time. And that difference is the difference between Trevor getting hit and Trevor getting that ball out. So that's the piece.
I think we see a concept here too where Evan Ingram could be utilized if he sees a zone as well there too. There may need to be some adjustments there in that concept. But here's the big thing for me, Trevor. If they're going to rely on the dagger, they need to come out with it early and often. I mean, come out throwing with this. I don't care who the starting quarterback is, if it's Bethard or Trevor, which, by the way, as reported on BigCatCountry.com, bing, that was your article, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Trevor's practicing.
Yes. Trevor's practicing. At least he was doing the individual drills as far as that's concerned on Thursday, which is crazy to me because I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, what? He's practicing with an AC sprain. All right. Every time I say this guy should not play or should not practice or just take a week off and just get better, you can't bet against him. You never know.
Yeah, let's bottom line it. He's practicing with a hurt throwing shoulder, as we understood it.
And as I wrote on Tuesday, AC sprains. There's a lot of quarterbacks there's a lot of players who've had these over the last few years. But there is a few for a grade one. Let's assume it's the most minimal AC sprain you can have. Even a grade one AC sprain is generally 1 to 3 weeks. Mark Andrews, Sam Bradford, etc. And then you start getting into the grade 2 area of time, and that's Derek Carr, Jameis Winston. That's normally 3 to 6 week time frame. Just for recovery, and they pad it up. They put medication. They maybe shoot it up. Everything they have to do there, and I'm just sitting there like, wait, he's practicing on Thursday doing individual stuff, like at least throwing the ball. Whoa, bro! But so he still may not be doing the team stuff, and there still may be some miscommunications as far as the receivers and the quarterback is concerned that we've already been talking about for literally the entire month of December, some of November. What are we doing, man? Sit him down. Like, what are we doing?
I would feel more comfortable if Christian Kirk was in this game because I feel like the two of them have developed a good chemistry. This in their second season together. I think that's a worthy point as well. But yeah, I get it. The guy's a beast. He's so tough that the lamestream media thought the Jacksonville Jaguars didn't have any golf carts in the facility, right? I'm going to keep making that joke, dude. I'm sorry. Because as somebody who has been at many games covering the Jacksonville Jaguars at Everbank, as I've seen, where they take a pair of golf carts every damn week to take the opposing coaches to their locker room.
Right.
That's a dumb take. Okay. Anyways.
It was so dumb.
I digress.
No, man, but at the end of all of it, I'm just like, all right, cool. So if he's going to play, fine, but don't be, Deontay Johnson. Don't be one of those guys, or even Big Ben. Don't be one of those guys who has to play every week. But then when they play at a diminished fashion. You know what I mean? Like, don't be one of those guys. I'm going to play, but I'm going to be less of myself, and it's going to impact the offense. But if you're going to, I have said this all the time, if you're going to play, you're going to get the criticism like you're healthy. Like you have to, that's just part of the game, unfortunately. And they keep having right, but they keep getting these miscommunication things, and it's because they're not practicing. Which Trevor himself said on Wednesday, "Hey, I'm not practicing, and some other guys aren't practicing, and that does cause these miscommunications. But then if you still can't practice because of your injury, but you're going to play, it's circular reasoning. It's going to keep happening because nothing can get better if you're not practicing."
Well, that's the die roll too. And I mean, listen, it's Coach Jimmy Johnson, the guy who had all the success with the Cowboys, who said the most valuable two players on your roster is your quarterback and your backup quarterback. Apparently, they don't trust C.J. Beathard to fill the gap, or they're not able to talk Trevor off the ledge. I don't know which it is precisely. I'm obviously not that close to what they're doing in the locker room. I'm not a member of the team, anything like that, but that's what that tells me is they don't think CJ Beathard can deliver on that. Perhaps, listen, three big things this offense needs, right? Interior lineman, a big target, because really the biggest target that's on the field is Evan Ingram. The biggest target on the squad is Jacob Harris in the practice squad, and he's only played but the one game against the Texans that went completely wrong on special teams. Like, technically speaking, UCF's Jacob Harris is the biggest player on the team at the receiver spot, and they do not use him. So I think that's what you're going to see here. Don't be surprised in late rounds here coming up in the draft if they get a large wide receiver or something happens in free agency as such. They get somebody with some size.
I like that. I mean, it's a deep wide receiver draft. It's a really deep wide receiver draft, but it's only going to be a deep wide receiver draft if you don't, like, if you get rid of one of the guys you currently have. So that has to be with the built-in assumption that either Calvin Ridley's not on the roster, Zay Jones not. One of these guys is not on the roster.
Yeah, whether it's them or one of the guys down the chart. Somebody, like, listen, we talked about in the preseason the depth and battle that is this receiver core, maybe you just say maybe you just damn the torpedoes and stay with the lollipop guild. I don't know, but the punchline is this. I don't mean that as disrespect to the skill. That's a hype.
I got you.
But with that in mind, we're at that point, Travis. Tell us what you think is going to happen at Everbank Stadium in the final game in Duval, in the regular season at least, the Carolina Panthers.
So I'd be a wild boy to predict a loss for a Jacksonville Jaguars team against a team that literally just got their second win of the season.
Your skepticism knows some bounds. We'll put it that way.
Right. I want to consider myself a realistic pessimist. Like, and I'm just not trying to just be crazy out in these streets. So I do believe the Jaguars will win against the Panthers. I'm saying something like a lower scoring, messy game, like a 23-17 Jaguars over Panthers. But I will say this. The Jaguars will have to find a way to be successful early. I mean, this is what, 3 games? Is it 3 games straight? Like against Cleveland, Baltimore, and Tampa Bay, the first 5 or 6 series, they had 0 points in all 3 of those games. Like, at that point, we're getting to some real Cleveland, first 6 drives, Baltimore, first 5 drives, Tampa Bay, first 6 drives, all 0 points for their offense.
That damn.
Right. Like, that's one of those ones that it's like, okay, cool. I wanted to make sure my notes weren't crazy. All right, cool. No, yeah, we obviously have to score points. That's missed field goals, that's turnovers, etc. But this is one of those defenses where you should be able to do it. Literally the worst defense. Not the worst defense, the 30th ranked defense in the league for DVOA, and 27th ranked in offense. So like they're not good in either one of these things. However, Bryce did show up a little bit against the Packers last week. So you never know especially against our defense. But again, I'm holding out a little bit of hope on this one, and that's not my forte. Jaguars 23, Panthers 17. That's where I'm leaning on, man.
Yeah, that's not the world Travis lives in, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong to go there. That being said, I hear what Travis is telling you. For you degenerates out there, bet the under, not the game. And I say all that to say, you say 23-17. I'm a bit more pessimistic on the scoring myself. I think each side has at least 1 turnover. I think Bryce has 2, 20-13 in favor of your Jaguars. That should be Duval devout joys from us. And as I said in my poem on Jaguar Report, I still think the Jags get 10 wins and they're going to make the playoffs regardless. But now, with help from the other teams, they can win the division. Week 18 is going to take somebody out, be it the Colts or the Texans. So that should all be interesting for you AFC South fans out there. So that'll wrap this week's edition of the Duval Dive. Travis, tell the people.
I can be found on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes, just like you see here. You can find me here every Friday at 11:15 a.m. The Duval Dive, a Jaguars podcast. You can also find me on the South Florida Tribune's Inside the Pigskin every Tuesday, wherever you get your pod information, subscriptions, and also you can find my writings covering the Jaguars at bigcatcountry.com.
An honor, joy, and privilege to have you in, my friend. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram and Threads as the same, the SOTG. Check out my writings with Jaguar Report. Of course, you'll see my weekly predictions I do with the rest of the team at Jaguar Report, as well as my weekly game day takeaway. Shouts to my dude, John Shipley, for doing his thing to get me involved with that. Of course, my writings with the 3-point conversion. I have covered 3 bowl games for them. Check out my Cure Bowl wrap if you're into G5 football. And of course, I am working on the Pop-Tarts Bowl and the Citrus Bowl. So check that out on the 3pointconversion.com, as well as my work with the Black and Gold Banneret. I also covered the Gasparilla Bowl, also covering UCF basketball as well. So check out those items I do there on blackandgoldbanneret.com, as well as the Night Shift podcast connected with the Black and Gold Banneret, and also my work covering the Orlando Magic with A7BN Sports. I will be back in the building there on January 9th. The Timberwolves come to town. I get to see some action from the NBA West. That should be a fun thing there too. But with all that in mind, good luck for you there, Duval Devout, because if they don't win this week, I'm even going to get pretty negative. So, until next time, my friends, for Travis Holmes of Big Cat Country, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game of Jaguar Report. Class dismissed.